Great documentaries aren't made by following trends. They're made by mastering the filmmaking foundations that often fly under the radar. In this video, I'm going to share 10 underrated documentary filmmaking practices that can elevate your work even if they don't get the same hype as the latest gear or flashy techniques. For each, I'll explain why it matters more than you might think, how it can improve your storytelling, and how to start incorporating it into your own filmmaking process. Hey everyone, I'm Austin Meyer. I'm a National Geographic Explorer, documentary filmmaker, and today's video is sort of a part 2 to last week's video. Last week I went over overhyped trends, and this week it's all about the underrated fundamentals. And I love talking about the fundamentals because I believe that no matter how good we are getting as filmmakers, we should always come back to the basics. This belief is grounded in my time at Stanford University, where I played on the varsity soccer team there. No matter how we did the previous season, whether we won the Pac-12 championship or struggled to make the national tournament, every preseason, we started with the same training drills. We started with the same step and drop defensive work that provided the foundation for our team's tactics and mindset. Revisiting that every season was a way to bring us back to our identity and to what mattered most. And I believe that we need to do that same thing as filmmakers. We need to come back to the step and drop defensive work, the foundations that aren't sexy, but that provide the building blocks for success. So here are 10 that I think we can all benefit from spending more time and energy on. Have you ever been watching a documentary and thought to yourself, how in the world did they get that interview? Or how were they there in that moment? What you are likely reacting to is the first underrated foundation of documentary filmmaking, unique access. In fact, when I think about what makes someone a great documentary filmmaker, it has way less to do with their ability to create a pretty image, and much more to do with their ability to gain access to places, people, and stories that no one else can. This isn't just about securing a permit or finding a subject. It's about developing the kind of trust and rapport that allows you to enter worlds that are typically off limits. Unique access can transform an ordinary topic into an extraordinary story by offering viewers a rare glimpse into a reality they wouldn't otherwise see. It requires persistence, patience, and often a lot of groundwork before the camera ever starts rolling. In my career, I've used all sorts of ways to get access to stories. I've leveraged those previously mentioned soccer connections to get access to film a story about soccer in the world's largest Syrian refugee camp. I've hopped on the backs of motorbikes and been dropped off in a remote Cambodian village to film a story about a community being displaced by hydroelectric dams. I've left notes on people's doorsteps to get access to a story about a home that was the only one in an entire neighborhood to survive a California wildfire. Look at this drone shot. That is his house, the only one left standing amidst a town of rubble. I've worked on stories where we had to convince leaders of the QAnon and Stop the Steal movements to let us into their personal lives ahead of the attack on the US Capitol. And I've spent months building trust before ever bringing a camera on set. There's no formula for getting access. We need to use our creativity, social intelligence, and sometimes our powers of persuasion to get access. Because when we do, our work is elevated far beyond the typical news pieces where a journalist parachutes in, extracts a story, and then jumps on a plane out of there. In the world of documentary, we have the luxury of time. Access isn't just, I'll give you a quote, it's, I will let you into my life through the highs and lows. If you want to start developing this skill in your own practice, here are 2 places to start. The first is to start making more asks, even if you think you'll be denied. Ask for access to document that band you love. Ask that athlete if you can film their off season. If you never ask, you'll never get access. And the second tip is to start telling stories based on where you already have unique access. Think about your communities, your friends, and your passions. Start there and learn what true access feels like. The next foundation that people don't talk about is casting the right documentary character. Documentary films hinge on the characters featured within them. Think about your favorite documentaries, and I'd be willing to bet that compelling characters are at the heart of them. That doesn't happen by accident. Similar to narrative filmmakers, Documentarians have to be intentional when it comes to casting their films. Don't build a feature-length documentary around someone you've met one time. Get to know them. Are they immersed in the story you are trying to tell? Do they have emotional depth? Are they actively seeking something in life that they don't currently have? Finding such a character takes time, and it often means looking beyond the obvious choices. One of the things that I like to do is to meet potential characters multiple times before I start filming with them. That can start with a phone call, move to a Zoom call, and finally a meeting in person. These are key moments to build trust and to get to know each other. And then if there seems like promise, I will often do a test shoot. There's no way to know how people will behave around the camera until we start bringing it around them. It's usually pretty clear early in the process of filming with someone if they will be the same person on camera as they are off it, which is really important to me. Just observe. Do they say the same things? Walk the same way? All those little nuances, those are important. One tactic that has been helpful for me on test shoots is to film participants in silence. Film them doing nothing and don't ask anything. How someone handles silence can be very telling. If you're interested in character casting, check out the link in the description to my full video about it where I go over 12 traits that you should be looking for, as well as a spreadsheet that I made that you can have on hand during pre-production. Along these lines, the third foundation you need to focus on is building trust with the participant. Trust is the foundation of any great documentary, and it starts long before you begin filming. It involves clear communication about your intentions, about your process of filming, what it means to be a participant in a documentary, and respecting boundaries. One of the most poignant examples of building trust that really taught me what this is all about is from back in 2015 when I reported for the New York Times alongside columnist Nicholas Kristof. On this trip, we were in Nepal reporting on human trafficking. We were at a safe house for young women who had been rescued. And going into one of our first interviews, I remember watching as Kristof spent a good 20 minutes before the interview shifting the balance of power in the room. He told the young women who he was, where he was from, where the story was going, what his goals were. They talked through anonymity and pseudonym choices. And then Kristof made sure to say, you are in control of the conversation. If at any point you want to stop the interview or not be a part of this story, you can say so. If you don't want to answer a question, you don't have to. You can take breaks. You can ask me anything. You are in control. Kristof had a keen awareness of the power dynamic in the room. And as a way of building trust, he took time up front to shift it. Now, Kristof wouldn't say this if we were working on a story about politicians in power, so it is dependent on context, but this sense of power dynamics is still so important to understand. When we come into an interview with a notepad or cameras or mics, we come with a power and a privilege. That power balance can make people feel like they have to answer questions or behave in a certain way. But it is neither ethical nor does it yield the best material when an interview is extractive. The best interviews come when there is a sense of shared control, when a participant understands that they have power and agency, when there is trust that flows both ways. The next foundation I want to touch on is definitely not sexy. It's to research the topic you are filming. The more you understand a topic, the better prepared you'll be to uncover the most compelling elements of your story. Research allows you to ask smarter questions, anticipate potential challenges, and gain a deeper understanding of the context surrounding your subject. It helps you avoid cliches and surface-level storytelling, allowing you to dig deeper into the nuances that make your film unique. So read books and articles, talk to experts, engage with communities, and even experience certain aspects of the topic firsthand if possible. The goal is to become as knowledgeable as possible so that when unexpected situations arise, which of course they will, it's a documentary, you're prepared to adapt and make the most of them. Foundation 5 is to film in a way that matches your story theme. The way you shoot your documentary should be guided by the story you're telling. Every shot, angle, and lighting choice should reflect the theme and tone of your film. If your story is about chaos and instability, consider using handheld shots or a shaky camera to reflect that feeling. If it's a contemplative story, opt for a slower, more deliberate camera movements. A recent example of this that I have been inspired by is the documentary All That Breathes. I've listened to almost every podcast interview with the director, Shanak Sen, and I love how he described the visual language of his film. In this documentary about two brothers living in New Delhi who rescue and rehabilitate injured birds, Shanak and his team filmed for almost a year using a handheld look. But eventually he decided to scrap that footage and start again because the aesthetic wasn't matching the story.
So initially when we started, a lot of the material was really handheld. You know, what happens is that if you're holding a camera, it has a kind of restless, anxious quality to it. We realized that the characters are such philosophers of the urban that the tone of the film had to be more contemplative and meditative, really. And we had to have it on a tripod or on sliders. It had to have a dreamy, flowy quality. The film has to look like a fiction. So we use the toys of fiction storytelling to tell a non-fiction story.
So like Shanak did for his film, start to think about your story, your characters, your themes, and your settings, and use that as inspiration for how you wield the camera and craft your edit. Now, while you're focused on your visuals, please don't forget to listen. Because one of the most underrated skills for documentary filmmakers is being a good listener. Whether you are meeting people to try and convince them to be a part of your documentary, or conducting an interview, or just keeping your headphones on to monitor that person wearing a lav mic, listening intently is how you build trust. Listening also gives you the information you need to know when to change and adapt your initial plan as the story changes in front of you. The great documentarian Albert Maysles was spot on when he said, "If you ended up making the film you set out to make, then you weren't listening along the way." So be present with the people and world around you. They will tell you where the story needs to go. Okay, so we got some great production fundamentals out there, but let's move into post-production, because I know a lot of you are working on post-production right now. And this first lesson is what I'm trying to focus on myself, and that is getting into a state of deep work when you edit. I don't know about you, but for me, it's very easy to get into a state of deep focus while I'm out filming, because I'm literally immersed in the story. It's go, go, go. There's not even time for distraction. But when it comes time to edit, I don't always block off days on my calendar like I would do during production phase. So what happens is meetings come up or a distraction here or there, and I end up editing in these short time blocks that don't lend themselves to deep, focused work. But more and more, I'm realizing that just like the production phase, when it comes to editing, I really do need to block my calendar for full days, which will allow me to sink in to the most time-intensive part of the documentary filmmaking process. Now, one of the things that makes sinking into the edit more enjoyable is an often overlooked piece of gear in the filmmaking world: a computer. My advice: get a computer that cranks through edits. Unfortunately, I really don't know too much about computers, so I don't have a strong perspective on what you should get. But as someone who is a saver and really doesn't buy much gear, a computer is where I'll happily get the upgrades and max things out for editing. It might not be as exciting as a new camera or lens, but a capable computer is an essential tool that ensures you can concentrate on the creative aspects of your edit without constant technical headaches. It makes editing faster and more fun, and that is what you should optimize for: assets that make creating stories quicker and more enjoyable. The ninth underrated foundation of the documentary filmmaking process is getting feedback. Getting feedback on your documentary drafts can be brutal. It can bruise your ego, make you feel like you failed, and leave you with more questions than answers. And that's why most filmmakers avoid feedback altogether, and consequently end up releasing films that don't live up to their potential. I can't state how critical it is for you to develop feedback loops in your creative process that help you build momentum instead of kill it. I made a full video about how to create these feedback loops, which again, I'll link to in the description. So I encourage you to check that out. But if you don't have time for that right now, just start by sharing some shitty first drafts with people whose opinions you trust and who you know want to support your progress as a filmmaker. Test your story early and often so that you can make changes before it's too late. And the final fundamental that doesn't get enough shine that I need y'all to do more of is share your work publicly. It's absolutely key to making a living in this space. Shoot consistently, find a place to share your work, share that work with people you want to work with, and do that for a long time until you get lucky. That's the secret. And when you're looking for a place to share your work, don't put down YouTube or Instagram because you romanticize movie theaters. Don't put down house screenings with family and friends because you'd rather be at an art gallery. Any way you can, get your work in front of people. It will help you build an audience, receive feedback, and create future opportunities. And don't be afraid to send your work to people you want to team up with. If you want to work with me, my email is down in the description of this video. If you want to work with Ken Burns, shoot him an email. Chances are you won't hear back from Ken. You'll hear back from me. But who knows? Maybe you will hear back from Ken. All you need is to get lucky one time and your life could change. All right, that's it from me. For deeper dives, check out some of those videos I referenced in the description and meet me in the comments. I'm sending you love. I'll see you next week. Until then, go out and tell some stories.